Hello, and welcome to Wired for Wellbeing, a podcast devoted to viewing our lives through a nervous system perspective to better understand what's actually going on and how to shift it. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been specializing in the treatment of trauma, dissociation, and chronic illness and chronic pain for over 40 years. In this podcast, we listen to real questions and challenges from people just like you, and we offer guidance, perspective, and a way through. I'm joined by my good friend and producer, Steve Lessard. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jeffrey. Hi, everybody.
I'm glad you're here. So today we're exploring the interplay between the nervous system and relationships. And it's quite natural and common that relationships offer us a source of pleasure, satisfaction, and deep connection. But just as frequently, relationships can be a source of struggle, pain, and disconnection. I'm going to clarify and demystify what's occurring in your nervous system and leave you with some ways to think about relationships that can help you. Steve, what do you have for us this week?
All right, Jeffrey. Well, as you mentioned, we've got two questions this week that talk about relationships. One that speaks about relationships from the end, from leaving a relationship, and the other about how to enter relationships. And I thought I'd start with the one for leaving a relationship because it felt like a more unique place to start our conversation today. So let's listen to this question from Elizabeth.
Great.
Hi, Jeffrey. My name's Elizabeth. My question is, how do you go about starting to heal your nervous system after leaving a relationship with a narcissist? Thank you so much for considering my question. Thank you, Jeffrey. Bye-bye.
Elizabeth, that's a wonderful question. As you seem already aware, our nervous system does play a significant role in how we navigate relationships and also how we tend to be able to take care of ourselves. So, particularly being in a relationship with a narcissist can be challenging, depending upon how narcissistic the individual is. The more extreme they are in their tendencies or traits, the more relationship disruption, unfortunately, happens. And at more extreme cases, this can include some narcissistic abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, which is telling you things that aren't true are true, or things that are true are not true, getting you to question your reality or your own right to have feelings or reactions. And so in some cases, being in a relationship with a narcissist is a form of emotional abuse, or can be. And that means that often after we've had that kind of experience, the disruption, this kind of trauma, if you will, relationship emotional abuse, will linger in the nervous system. And how it shows up often is people continue to doubt themselves, have continued low self-esteem, worry that they may not find another person to love them. Matter of fact, sometimes a narcissistic partner will say, "You will never find anyone who will love you as well as I love you," which is a threat, basically, that if you leave me, you'll never find love again. So those kinds of fears frequently haunt ex-partners of narcissists, along with this confusion about how they could get so close to someone who could ultimately be so destructive or hurtful or manipulative. So the first steps in sort of finding your way back after ending a relationship with a narcissist is first to begin to do some inner work, to check out what you feel you might need. And I know that sounds a little vague. What I mean by that is to actually get back in touch a bit with your body. Most of us, for the most part, live in our heads, and that's how a lot of society works. But we lose a tremendous amount of pivotal information by just being in our thoughts and thinking about stuff. If we begin to tune into our body, that's where we can see and sense the load or the burden on the nervous system. For example, if your body is tense, holding a lot of tension, gripping in the jaw, tight shoulders, tight abdomen, then those are signs of stress, contraction, still holding that. If you find thoughts of fear going on, worried that you won't find happiness again or that someone won't love you, again, that's a defensive state of fear. And again, you're going to feel not safe, not grounded, not too present. You're going to feel unpleasantly activated. And of course, you could also be sent to, what we call like that collapse, disappear zone, where we just want to withdraw from the world. Here we don't feel so energized. We feel actually de-energized. We feel incapable of facing the day sometimes, or facing our life, or going on. So just noticing where your body and, by way of that, your nervous system is afterwards helps you begin to learn what condition your nervous system is in after this relationship. And most of us, if we've had any kind of stressful or adversive experience, need some time to actually intentionally release some of this gripping and contraction and bracing that we've been holding because we've been living inside of a relational struggle for so long. So it actually can be an opening up of new doors in your awareness to begin to really look towards a kind of self-care. Again, for folks that fall into relationships with narcissists, those individuals often have an easier time caring for and giving to other people than they do to themselves. So during this time, it would be really important to continuously, as best you can, and intentionally pay attention to the state of your body and your mind. And by doing that, you can begin to sort of sense how much of dysregulation you experience, how much out of sorts you feel, how far away you feel from feeling safe, calm, compassionate, present. That lets you know you're in a state of regulation. When we can access compassion, creativity, humor, and we feel open to relating, that's a regulated state. And that's the best portal to be ready for new relationships, and also to find our way back to ourselves after the ending of a relationship, is to really come back in touch with caring for our needs and our ways of being. So basic advice would be to offer yourself good and consistent self-care, and practices that for grounding after a lot of disruption, especially for high energy, include like a long out breath, which is where you inhale for a count of 3 and exhale for a count of 6, or the containment hug. These are things that you can do to begin to bring yourself back. And there's also a free video I offer on the site that goes through a bunch of these techniques you can also use in addition. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your question. And you're already ahead of the game by knowing that you probably have some healing and repair work for your own nervous system. So I wish you the best of everything in this journey, returning back to yourself. That was a great question.
It was a great question. And I wonder, Jeffrey, because Elizabeth is up against some challenging things of healing her nervous system and managing leaving this relationship. Are there any signposts or markers of progress that you might invite Elizabeth to continue to look for, that in a situation where Elizabeth might feel like they're not making progress, they actually may be making progress?
Great question too, Steve. That's a great point to bring out. I think that the journey involves a coming back to trusting ourself, trusting our instincts, trusting our gut feelings, that often in relationship with a narcissist, we begin to distrust because of how they are in the world. So some of the final goalposts include a more consistent sense of trusting your inner guidance, your inner gut sense, your intuition, so to speak. And along the way, any moment that you listen to and trust your inner sensing is a step towards recovering a sense of well-being and inner connection. And often you'll find yourself more enveloped, because this is our mind's tendency to look at things more from a negative light. My wife was sharing with me a meme today that said that, negative comments are written in the brain in permanent ink, and positive comments and praise are written in pencil. And the truth is, we have such an easy time remembering almost every negative thing said to us, but we do not, and this is from our wiring, we're not trained to hold on to things that are positive. They land, but they land nowhere near as impactfully as a negative comment or criticism, whether this is coming from someone else or whether this is coming from us towards ourselves. So anytime that you see that your inner conversation can also begin to move towards a more tender or friendly or kind tone, this narrative that we have, this thinking that goes on, or the voice that some of us hear, often it has that quality of shame and blame and harsh judgment. And beginning to notice that and to try to lean into something more kind, more tender, more friendly to that state. Another really great practice to do if someone has been wounded by being in a relationship with a narcissist is self-compassion practices. Because one of the things that happens is that if we're in a relationship with a narcissist, we end up actually disliking ourselves more and more. And so self-compassion practice is a way of undoing, or an antidote to that circuitry of self-hate, self-judgment, and self-shaming, which is what can really get activated and reinforced if we're in a relationship with someone who has narcissistic tendencies.
All right. Well, I want to now take us to our second voicemail that we received from an anonymous caller. Let's just jump right in and take a listen to this one.
Since I stopped drinking about 15 years ago, I've tried to cultivate new friendships based in part on an absence of substances. This, however, is a tricky transition. With the AA community, I feel smothered by indoctrination. I have befriended a few people with whom I feel safe, but still, after a long time, I experience a deep loneliness. Like, it's nice to be sharing this meal with you, for example. I really am grateful, but no way in hell would you put effort into cultivating this friendship if you knew my other side. And with that awareness constantly running through my mind, I navigate clean living while as if I am betraying that wild horse in me that got put in a closet. It's not that I'm ashamed of that wild horse. I love her. I care for her. I understand her. But I'm afraid to expose her, I think. And maybe I don't have to. I don't really know what a healthy, intimate, sharing relationship looks like. And I would appreciate your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Wow, that is a very powerful and moving question. And there's a lot in here that I'd love for us to unpack. First of all, this was submitted by an anonymous caller. Thank you very much for your question. I first of all admire your ongoing internal program and discipline to have stopped drinking and to live a substance-free life. That is a courageous and difficult decision for someone to make. It's an important and often life-saving decision, but it also can come with different kinds of costs. People you hang around with, activities you can partake in, and so forth. So you're right. You gave up a life that had some substance and alcohol in it, or just alcohol, and with that, socializing with a regular group of friends or supports or other people, perhaps. I also get, and you're not alone with this, I also get that um, you can feel that some of the dogmatic or programmatic things of like Alcoholics Anonymous can feel smothering to you, too restrictive and constrictive. Now, I want to pause there for a second and say, in that moment, you're picking up a signal from your nervous system. Your nervous system, when you're hearing or feeling the pressure of conforming or belief, feels a resistance, feels probably what I would call fight energy. We have fight or flight energy in our higher energy responses. And this is a taste of fight. I don't want it. I don't want to do anything with it. It angers me. I don't feel like being suffocated. And some energy of flight. I want to get away. I don't want that much to do with them. I'll connect with them, but I can't be 100% all the time in the AA community. That can't be the extent of all of my social relations. That's also being wise, being in tune with your nervous system, knowing that your nervous system is saying you need something more. You're searching for something more, right? And while you're searching, and by the way, everybody, all humans, are wired to want connection, to wait for connection, to long for connection. So this desire is also something that is aligned with your nervous system. It's actually being driven a bit by your nervous system. We are literally wired to want to seek connection and be in warm, safe connection. But there's another voice inside of you, right? That's sort of saying, but I have this wild horse. And if I show anybody this wild horse, they may not want to have anything to do with me whatsoever. So like I can go out to dinner and I can be connected to them to a certain extent, but I can't be fully authentically me because I think that it'll overwhelm them or send them away. I know that you said you don't feel any shame towards this part of you, and you may not. But it feels like there's some part of you that feels that this wild horse might be shameful. I'm not saying it is. I don't think any part of this is shameful. But we frequently judge aspects of ourselves as either acceptable or unacceptable. This wild horse in you, you've sort of judged as unacceptable. And that means that you're divided inside and you have to hide this part of your authenticity. And then the question you rose was, maybe I don't have to share everything with them. And that's absolutely true, right? You can share appropriate elements of energy of the wild horse that feels appropriate and enlivening and a part of the flow in the moment. I don't know whether, though, your wild horse was associated with the part of you that may have sought substances or alcohol or to express her feelings much more dramatically. Again, I'm not quite sure about what role this wild horse aspect had for you, but she needs to find a way, you need to find a way for the wild horse energy to somehow be welcomed home, to find a way to work with your wild horse energy so that you can express it, use it, be informed by it, but not necessarily driven to perform activities or behaviors that would be self-destructive or harmful to others. Finally, you share very vulnerably that you don't really know what an intimate and healthy, connected relationship kind of looks like. And first of all, I'm sorry that your earlier experiences didn't provide that for you, and you're not alone. Many people have experiences where they don't ever learn that there's a place for love or intimacy, connection, or safety because their families were so devoid of it. But in general, a healthy relationship involves two basic principles and more, but the two basic principles are mutuality and reciprocity. Mutuality means that the relationship is mutually beneficial to both of us. We both enjoy and feel strengthened and uplifted or supported in our relationship, and that it feels each of us is receiving strong and good benefit, that we are not feeling abused or manipulated or exploited, but we're feeling like we're really partners in a friendship, not one partner having much more power than the other. And reciprocal means that it's also not one-sided in terms of actions and giving and participation and engagement. So it would mean that if you bought coffee for a friend, they'd buy coffee for you for another time, or a snack. Or it doesn't have to be tit for tat, but the idea is in unhealthy relationships, one person often ends up giving a lot more and feeling kind of emptied out and exploited for it and resentful. And in a healthy relationship, that resentment isn't there because there's enough of a sense of ongoing reciprocity that, yeah, so maybe I do more for you this week or this month, but there's plenty of weeks and months you've done more for me. And our relationship will be able to flow back and forth without having to keep exact tabs because we both know it's reciprocal and it's mutual. We're both committed to this, and we both feel that it's not an uneven distribution of friendship burden, right? So I would look towards trying to sense with your nervous system what kinds of people you feel the most close with. And for the friends that you're having dinner with, and it's nice, but you feel like you're just staying on the surface, you're not dropping into some more fulfilling and nourishing contact or intimacy, I recommend that you begin to try a little excursion, a little reach. Maybe you share a feeling that you're aware of in that moment, or a struggle that you've had, or even a little bit about this feeling of that you have a wild horse in you, you kind of closeted after your drinking and not quite really sure how to reintegrate her into your life. Or it could be anything. But the suggestion here is to begin to take small, manageable risks in experimenting with trying to have a relationship to your wild horse, to her feelings, to her strengths, to her vision, and also be aware of if the wild horse has any liabilities, like maybe it's not as committed to sobriety. And again, I'm making up a story here because I don't have you in front of me to be able to talk back and forth with this, but I'm hoping to open up some lines that you could get curious about in terms of your relationship to this very important part of you, the wild horse. And you absolutely can have a mutual and reciprocal relationship, but sometimes we have to search a while to find people that are capable of that. Not everybody is capable of being in a mutual and reciprocal relationship. They're in a state of too much need, or feel very dependent and need to have someone to depend upon. And that's not wrong. That's where they are. But that may not be a person who's going to be a good match for what you're looking for. I hope this helps. And if it moves you, I'd love for you to drop us a call in a few months and just let us know how this went for you. Thank you.
Jeffrey, I'm really glad you came back to the piece of the person might not be safe to let the wild horse run in front of. And what came up in my mind is, are there any things you might offer our anonymous caller of like signs that person, like real practical signs that person isn't safe as they're trying to navigate their own experience and understand, is this someone who can see this horse run in a field?
So our nervous systems are very attuned to facial expressions, micro movements around the eyes, cheeks, mouth, for all the ranges from smiling to frowning and any little micro faces in between. We pay very close attention to the quality of someone's voice. If it's constricted or higher pitched through stress versus unconstricted and lower pitched through a more relaxed set of vocal cords. And our bodies, our nervous systems respond accordingly. So our anonymous caller, right, picks up that some of the dogma or rules of AA feel suffocating to her. So that's her nervous system immediately giving feedback that doesn't feel safe or good for her. So that's wonderful, right? That's information. If we're talking with someone and we begin to get feelings in our belly that we're not comfortable here, or we start feeling a bit flatter, we start feeling a bit removed, those are signals that there may be something going on in the interaction that we're detecting that's making us feel either less safe, less seen, less heard, or less understood. And if that's coming up, we begin to pull back. We begin to not want to engage as much, and we begin to shut down. So if you notice that, that's a signal that response is being pulled up. Now, I want to go into two other concepts here that are really important. Over time, we'll come back to these, but we have this ability called neuroception. It's a big word, neuroception. But what it means is the ability of my nervous system to automatically scan for and detect safety or danger inside of myself, in the environment around me, and to some extent inside of you. That's how my nervous system, through neuroception, pays attention to all these facial and vocal changes and begins to make a behind the mind kind of unconscious and automatic assessment of, are you in a state that's safe? Or are you in a state that could be a danger to me? So our neuroception has two capacities. We can either notice that something is unsafe, and it really is. That's called matched neuroception. But many of us can experience something called mismatched neuroception. And that's when I'm convinced that you're safe, but you're not. You're reminding me of someone that I really loved deeply years and years ago. And in fact, maybe you're a serial killer. And I'm not picking that up because I'm just so convinced that you remind me of my friend. You got to be just like my friend. It can also go the other way. I could see you as a really dangerous person that I shouldn't have anything to do with. And it turns out you have a mustache, and the mustache reminded me of someone who was terribly cruel to me when I was younger. And so the mustache alone is making me get activated and afraid and reactive to that. But it's not based on anything other than the mustache. It's not based on actual danger, an actual threat to me in this moment. It's reminding me of an old threat. But in the moment, I can't differentiate if I'm being reminded of an old threat or if I'm experiencing a potent threat in this moment. So it's important to first learn how to listen to and trust our nervous system, our gut reactions, our sense of what's occurring in our body and the quality of the narrative we're saying to ourselves, whether it's uplifting or critical and scolding. And then it's also helpful to get a little curious about, for example, with the dogma of AA, it could be that the dogma just feels suffocating. Or it could be that the dogma feels suffocating because, and again, I'm making up a story here, maybe you were indoctrinated into a very strong dogma as a child, whether religious or political or cultural or whatever it was. And that may have such a negative, traumatic valence or charge for you that anything that even begins to smack like dogma brings that feeling of it's suffocating you, it's horrible, you can't tolerate it. Now, you're the one that would be able to decide whether this is matched or mismatched neuroception, because you're going to be able to have some curiosity about, is this really this dangerous right now, or I just find it very, very unpleasant. So beginning to understand that we have a whole lot of data at our fingertips, literally at our fingertips, in our gut, in our heart rate, in our throat. We have all this body wisdom, nervous system information that drives us in our life so much. Here we try to talk about how people can become more aware of the moves and shifts in their nervous system and how to work with it instead of fighting it and work against it.
So what's going on in our nervous system in relationships related to these two callers, to the beginning of a relationship like our last caller, or the ending of a relationship like our first caller? Take us behind the scenes here.
So our nervous systems really are the operating system that our lives unfold on. And our nervous system was designed, especially our autonomic nervous system, was designed to be ever vigilant to keep us alive. And so our autonomic nervous system is always searching for danger and safety. That's its job, as well as keeping your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your blood pressure useful. But very few of us actually pay attention to our nervous system. It's like they say, like fish don't know water because it's all they swim in, right? We're swimming in our nervous system all day long. And instead of recognizing it as our nervous system, we make stories about, oh, I'm being stupid, or I'm being wrong, or I hate when I'm like that. And it's a lot more blame and shame inducing to feel like it's a psychological weakness that we do these things. Where the truth is much more liberating. The truth is that our nervous system is always looking to protect us and to keep us safe. And it'll do it in ways that may not serve us, certainly may not make us more happy. But because the nervous system isn't interested in happiness, it's interested in keeping you alive. Miserable, possibly, but alive, right? Because even miserable, you'll get your genes to the next generation. So in some ways, our nervous system is primary in all of life, and it is no less primary in the interactions between humans. Matter of fact, most of us can get the most dysregulated in relationships, whether with friendships or adversaries or bosses or neighbors or children or parents. So all of these ups and downs that every relationship has also has an impact on the nervous system. Now, most of the ups and downs that most of us have are not that big. Say you and I have an argument about something, and then, we find a way to talk it out, and 10 minutes later, we're totally fine and it's gone, right? But then there are other relationships where if there's some conflict, it doesn't get expressed, and it just goes underground and gets, it festers into resentment, or it erupts into rage, and then it becomes something that can't really be fixed or repaired or worked through at times. And so this place of our nervous system trying to navigate what we need and what others need can open a whole ball of wax for many of us. A lot of people probably err on the side of being more willing to give their needs up, or some of their needs up, in service to another person. And that by doing that, by hiding parts of ourselves or by putting up in relationships that are less than healthy, less than supportive of our well-being and our thriving, that is a pattern that nervous systems will keep us in. So when we're willing to begin to tune to these messages, to these movements of our nervous system, that's where we begin to move into the driver's seat of our life. And that's especially noticeable if we begin to bring this capacity into relationships. So our first caller, Elizabeth, was moving out of a relationship that probably had burden, maybe some abuse, certainly some pain. And she was aware that she needs to actually be tender to her nervous system. She needs to offer it a repair, which is great awareness. And the repair for coming out of abuse or trauma, a relationship, whether it's current or past, is similar. It's the idea of learning how to befriend our nervous system and how to learn how to shift some of our states if we're stuck in despair or we're stuck in terror or we're stuck in anger, how to find our way back to a kind of regulation. Because if I'm in regulation, Steve, I can relate with you. I can have my feelings. I can have space for your feelings. And it doesn't have to be me or me trying to override you or you trying to override me, right? If I'm regulated, if you're regulated, if anyone is regulated, we touch into this capacity to connect. If I'm in fight energy with you, you're my enemy, right? There's no connection there. There's, I have to prove you're wrong and I'm right. But if I'm in a regulated state, one name for that regulated state is the social engagement system, or the tend and befriend system, means that we access this ability to be socially engaged, to take care of other people, to befriend other people, which is the exact opposite of when we're in fight or flight, or when we're seeping down into the dark abyss of collapse and shutdown. So for Elizabeth, she's going to want to do some restorative, relaxing practices that help her body come back to a sense of balance, hopefully to take advantage of co-regulation with friends, meeting with friends, getting a sense of how others can see her in a healthy way instead of in a negative way. For our anonymous caller, she's pointing out how the fear that she's containing a part of her and believes that this part of her is not fit for prime time yet, leaves her struggling with her own nervous system. And that struggle is part of what's getting in the way of her finding and creating what she longs for, which is deeper connection. That's what we all long for. And also this idea that there are a lot of us that actually do not know what a healthy, mutual, reciprocal, intimate relationship is because we haven't been blessed with that. And so instead, we create relationships that our nervous system is familiar with. So if I was familiar with dysfunction growing up, my nervous system is really comfortable being with dysfunctional people because I know that dance, right? Doesn't make me happy, but I know that dance. How's that land?
The power of understanding where we are and coming from a place of regulation has been such a powerful tool, even in my relationship, even recently, to be able to just make decisions that benefited me and the relationship. And coming from a place of, they weren't necessarily easy decisions. They weren't the decisions I wanted to make, but I also, my wife and I realized we were people we didn't want to be. We were coming to a place of being at war with each other, and we don't want that in our relationship, but we couldn't stop it until we found a place to regulate, to calm down, and to create some space for ourselves. So there's so much power, there's so much benefit in that, not only in relationships, obviously, but in so many areas, so many places.
And do you feel like the landing place of the relationship has shifted? In other words, if you guys were more conflict, sort of noticing this, what have you experienced has replaced the conflict?
The love, that I hoped and wanted and we strive for in our relationship. What else has replaced it is assuming grace. We assume the other person is acting from a place of love for us. And that wasn't accessible to me when I was exhausted and frustrated and everything she did drove me crazy. I couldn't assume that grace as easily when she would ask a question that felt like a burden to me. But really, she's doing it from a place of love because she really wanted to know what I wanted for dinner. But I didn't want another long example there. But what became available to both of us is just getting to a place of, okay, this other human is coming from a place of support and love. That became accessible to us.
So what you're pointing out there is a great little example. Thank you. Is the idea that in a state, if I'm angry, everything that I see and think is anger. And you come with me with, would you like to do this? And I'm angry and I don't want to be asked another question. And instead of seeing you, I feel the attack, the burden, the onslaught of something that my nervous system doesn't want anything of. Now, our immediate response when that happens is for most of us to go to blame the other person. You should effing know I'm tired and you shouldn't be asking me a question right now or whatever it is. And it makes sense to go there, but all that does is keep spinning the wheels. You throw gas on the fire, partner throws gas on the fire, you throw gas on, bing, 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 bing. It goes on, right? So our nervous system perspective gives us a way out of this almost eternal conflict that humans get into, right? We're always going to get into power struggles. We're always going to get into disagreements. But if they charge us into fight, right? If we really get that fight energy will never help you resolve any conflict. It'll never help you get closer to someone else. It is only designed to protect your life by fighting. And in that moment, it's no longer a saber-toothed tiger you're fighting. You're fighting the opinion of your partner. And we're still fighting just as strong as if it's a tiger. So there is this great liberation that can happen that you may not experience or know about until you actually experience it, which is that if I can shift out of anger and come back a little bit more towards feeling settled, towards my heart, towards my body, I can see the world in different lights. I can feel it in different light. The problem that was there 5 minutes ago isn't the same problem now. It's like, okay, yeah, well, that was stupid. And my reaction was stupid. And okay, but like, it's gone. It's cleared out. And I think that, what is really transformative is that piece of people getting that this is an empowering stance, right? This is the opposite of making you feel worse about yourself. It's actually trying to help you feel more empowered, more creative, and more able to find a way out of conflict instead of what we used to just suffer with conflict is to find a way to heal it.
Well, as we go into wrapping up our time today, is there anything else you want to leave our two callers with or our listeners and viewers with?
I think the main thing is just that it's so worthwhile to begin a dive into understanding your own nervous system, not as a challenge or not to make you feel inadequate without it, but it's like we're born without an operating system for our brains and bodies. They run our lives, and yet we really, up until now, had no idea what was going on. Last 15, 30 years, we've learned so much, and in particular, from polyvagal theory, we've come to understand so much about what creates the suffering and struggle in relationships and in ourselves in daily life is nervous system driven. It also has a piece to do with early experiences, trauma, how you were brought up, but our nervous system is the link. And if you work at the level of the nervous system, then you can really heal the majority of these kinds of life type struggles, pains, conflicts, that we can move out of a tendency to jump into fight and we can move towards a tendency to move towards connection instead of separation.
Jeffrey, how can our friends learn more about you? How can they leave a voicemail so we can answer it at a future date?
Well, I just want to thank our callers again for this really thoughtful questions. I really appreciated you sharing where you are and sending that question in. Thank you so much. If you'd like to send a question, please feel free to call our toll-free voicemail line to leave questions, and that's 866-357-5156. That's 866-357-5156. Or if you're unable to reach an 866 exchange from an international number, please feel free to send an email with an audio recording if you can. And if you can't, an email just with your question. And you can send that email to hello, HELLO, at drjeffreyrutstein.com. That's hello at drjeffreyrutstein.com. Remember, learning about and living within your nervous system is a portal to having more comfort, more ease, and more empowerment in your daily life. If you'd like a free gift, the one that I mentioned earlier that goes through some other techniques you can explore, feel free to go to my website and type in this address at drjeffreyrutstein.com/free gift. That's drjeffreyrutstein.com //free gift, all one word. And finally, if you've enjoyed this and would like to help out, please tell a friend. Invite them to tell a friend. Thank you so much for your time and your presence today. I really appreciate it. Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein signing off for now. And Steve, thank you so much for your presence and your support today.
Thank you for all that you're offering here, Jeffrey, and thanks for everybody. And we're looking forward to hearing from more and more people.
See you next time.